And hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us here on ABC News Live. New reports of ransom demands, $17 million for 17 kidnapped missionaries in Haiti. The FBI making contact with the gang suspected in those abductions. 5 children among those kidnapped. The latest details from our team on the ground just ahead. Other developing stories, North Korea tests firing a suspected submarine ballistic missile. That launch coming just hours after the U.S. doubled down on its desire to initiate diplomatic talks with the regime over its nuke program. Families and survivors of the 2018 mass shooting in Parkland, Florida, reach a $25 million settlement with the Broward County School District. The deal struck after the school district was accused of negligence for failing to prevent that massacre that killed 17 students and faculty and injuring 17 others. 23-year-old Nicholas Cruz, who's accused of opening fire on his classmates at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High, expected to plead guilty to the 17 counts of first-degree murder and 17 counts of attempted murder tomorrow. We'll carry it live right here on ABC News Live. And if you're tired of unwanted text messages bombarding your phone, well, listen up. The FCC vowing to crack down, now considering a proposal curbing those annoying robocalls, requiring wireless companies to block illegal robo-texts, many of which are scams. And the Chicago Sky taken to the streets for a ticker tape parade after the Lady Hoopsters become WNBA champs for the first time in franchise history. The sold-out home crowd at Wintrust Arena witnessed Phoenix Mercury getting smacked down 80-74 in Game 4 of the WNBA Finals, prompting today's citywide celebration. Huge congratulations to the Chicago Sky and their much-deserved win. All right, well, we begin with that story out of Haiti, where the FBI is now on the ground working to bring those 17 missionaries kidnapped on the island back home. The gang responsible for the abduction reportedly demanding millions of dollars in ransom. The U.S. now deploying a team to work with Haitian National Police in those negotiations underway to secure their release. The missionaries visiting an orphanage when the gang abducted them at a checkpoint during an airport run. ABC News' Marcus Moore is on the ground in Haiti with the latest for us.
New reports that the kidnapping gang that abducted 17 missionaries is seeking $17 million, or $1 million per hostage, according to the Wall Street Journal. U.S. State Department officials on the ground as the crisis enters its 4th day.
This is something that we have treated as with the utmost priority since Saturday.
16 U.S. citizens, including 5 children and 1 Canadian, among those kidnapped at a checkpoint after visiting this orphanage. The group in Haiti on behalf of Christian Aid Ministries in Ohio. The organization putting out a statement saying, quote, "We continue to monitor the situation closely and are in earnest prayer." A U.S. Embassy official confirming to ABC News that the FBI has made contact with the gang, known as 400 Mawozo, the gang considered one of the most dangerous in the country. As gangs control nearly half of the capital city, fear is consuming the country, felt by many, like Godwin, a missionary from Miami who's been in Haiti for the last 3 years.
People are being kidnapped left or right. But you were able to identify the people that were getting kidnapped. But now it's totally random. I think everyone here in Haiti has some sense of fear.
He says the alarming surge in abductions comes as gangs become more and more confident.
They don't have any repercussions. There's no security, there's no police, there's no one to come help. And that's probably the worst thing. You're on your own.
And Kira, that is a reality that so many people here in Haiti have been living with for quite some time. And this brazen kidnapping of 17 people, they say, is further proof that the street gangs here that run a large part of the city have grown more and more confident. And the hope right now is that there will be a peaceful resolution to this crisis that is unfolding here in Port-au-Prince. Kira.
Marcus Moore in Port-au-Prince for us. We will follow that story, of course, daily. Former President Donald Trump is suing the January 6 investigative committee and the National Archives to block the release of his White House records related to the Capitol attack. But that hasn't stopped the House Select Committee's pressure on the former president and close allies to divulge more information of its probe of the deadly insurrection. ABC News producer Catherine Falders with more on this for us this morning. So, Catherine, in the lawsuit, Trump's attorney actually argues that the committee has decided to harass President Trump by sending, and I continue to quote, an illegal, unfounded, and overbroad record request to the Archivist of the United States. How likely is this defense actually going to hold up against Congress?
Yeah, Kara, this lawsuit is asking the court to invalidate the committee's request entirely. But look, this is an interesting test. It hasn't been tested by the courts before. So this is potentially going to set up this interesting showdown between the committee, the courts, the current administration, whether former presidents can even assert executive privilege in the first place. Now, this was a bit tested before after the Nixon administration, where the Supreme Court did rule that former presidents should have some say in what exactly is privileged information, what is covered by executive privilege. But what was different then and different now is that you didn't have a current administration saying, actually, these aren't covered by privilege. So again, this is all going to play out in what I would think would be a pretty extensive legal battle in the courts.
So we're anticipating this vote by the House Select Committee citing former White House advisor Steve Bannon also for criminal contempt of Congress. He was refusing to come forward, and he referenced Trump's executive privilege as he refused to turn over the documents. So what comes next as that pressure builds up around Trump and his closest allies like Bannon?
Yeah, Trump has told Bannon not to cooperate, so he has essentially defied this subpoena that asked about his communications with the former president surrounding the January 6th insurrection, that asked for documents. Clearly, he didn't show up. So the committee today, in terms of what's next, will hold this vote just in the committee to hold Steve Bannon in criminal contempt. Then what will happen is the House of Representatives, the full House, will take this up. They will put it on the floor for a vote. We are told that could happen as soon as this week. And then what Speaker Pelosi does is take this contempt report that the committee is drafting, that the full House will vote on, and essentially certifies it, sends it over to the Department of Justice. So she'll send it over to the D.C. U.S. Attorney, and then that is in their hands.
Well, no surprise here. It's going to be a massive legal showdown. That happens with anything that Trump's involved with. So what are the options on the table now for the committee and Trump's defense lawyers?
Yeah, I think the committee is moving forward in terms of the subpoenas that they've issued. They've issued at least 18 subpoenas so far. They have gotten cooperation, Kira, from some top officials in the previous administration, including the former acting attorney general. There are some depositions scheduled for this week for some of the organizers, people involved in the planning of that rally that led to the insurrection. So they're going to continue to go down that path, the investigative path. They're still going to get documents, obtain depositions behind closed doors, and then a separate track, which will be this legal battle with the former president over the documents from the archives, and then, of course, over whether his top aides can testify behind closed doors to the committee.
All right, Catherine, thank you so much. Coming up, Day 2 of jury selection for Ahmaud Arbery's murder trial. Attorneys now questioning potential jurors. Welcome back. So glad you're with us on this Tuesday. Well, today is the second day of jury selection in the high-stakes murder trial of the 3 white men charged in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, the unarmed black man gunned down while jogging last year. Elwin Lopez is at the courthouse for us with more.
Have you, for any reason, formed and expressed any opinion in regard to the guilt or innocence of the accused?
Day 2 of the high-stakes jury selection is underway as the 3 men charged with the killing of Ahmaud Arbery face trial.
Have you any prejudice or bias resting on your mind, either for or against the accused?
Attorneys for both sides questioning potential jurors about their knowledge of Arbery's death, their attitudes on race in America, and the Black Lives Matter movement, and whether they believe they can remain impartial at the trial for Travis and Gregory McMichael, who, along with their neighbor William Rhodey Bryan, are facing charges of murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment.
Please raise your hand if you believe that people of color are not treated fairly in the criminal justice system.
Potential jurors also asked to complete this questionnaire about the video of Arbery's shooting and the publicity in the case, asking, have you commented on this case in the news or on social media? Have you seen video of the shooting? And if yes, how many times? The McMichaels say they were acting under Georgia's then citizens arrest law after they say they saw Arbery inside of a home under construction. It wasn't until this year that that law was repealed.
And it could take 2 weeks before all 12 jurors and 4 alternates are seated. The 3 defendants have pleaded not guilty to the charges. Kira?
Elwyn, thank you so much. I'd like to bring in now civil rights lawyer and activist Nekima Armstrong and director of the Health Disparities Institute at UConn Health, Wisdom Powell, for more on this very much of a high-stakes trial. Nekima, let's start with you. We heard in Elwyn's piece that potential jurors are being questioned about their knowledge of Arbery's murder and also their attitudes toward race in America and the Black Lives Matter movement. Let's talk about how the media attention on this case can truly impact a jury and also the criteria for its selection.
Well, I think that the media's role is like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, were it not for the media helping to publicize this case, the majority of folks across America would not even know Ahmaud Arbery's name. And then on the other hand, you have folks who have been consumed with news about the case, which could potentially impact their ability to serve on a jury and to be neutral coming into the trial.
So, Wisdom, what do you make of day one of jury selection, and what are you looking out for with respect to the entire process?
Thank you for the question. I mean, obviously, this trial holds a lot of emotional valence for the family, for Black communities, and for our nation. And because of this, we should expect that this trial will have some psychological impact on jurors. And I think to be certain, we have to recognize how important of a role jurors play in our American justice system. So I'll be paying attention, obviously, to the instruction given by the judge to jurors as they enter the trial, particularly because we know that jurors can experience psychological distress, adverse impacts as a result of serving on the trial, which can be mitigated if, in fact, they are primed and prepared for the emotional impacts that will surely ensue.
And Nekima, you know, the men are arguing that they were acting under Georgia's former citizens arrest law, which was repealed after Arbery's death. How much will that law and the timing of the repeal play a part in this trial, you think?
I think that it could definitely have an impact, especially given a part of the defense's case will be that Travis and his father relied upon that law when they decided to pursue Ahmaud Arbery. The fact that the father in this case had been a police officer may also come into play in terms of his claims of tracking down an alleged burglary suspect. I'm glad that that law was repealed. I am sure that there are roots connected to racism with regard to that particular law, but it's a shame that it took the death of a 25-year-old Black man minding his own business for that law to be repealed.
So, Wisdom, how do you think this trial is going to be remembered in history?
Well, I'm hoping that we will remember, first of all, that this trial is an opportunity for us to revisit wounds that have been deeply affecting America's consciousness for a very long time. And I'm hoping that we'll remember that the trial itself is necessary to ascend us to a form of justice that we have been long awaiting. I think that it's really going to be important for us to remember what brought us to this critical precipice so that we don't repeat these same mistakes twice. Undoubtedly, we are all holding our collective breaths, waiting to see what will prevail in the end. And I hope that we'll remember that this kind of wounding can be prevented and mitigated if we intervene on the structures that produce the kinds of inequities that brought this to bear on our consciousness.
And Nekima, your thoughts as well on that before we wrap.
Well, I'm sure that this trial will be very triggering, particularly for Black people here in this country. As you know, we just experienced the trial of Derek Chauvin here in Minneapolis, the man who was primarily responsible for the murder of George Floyd, along with 3 other officers. Our community still has not healed from the trauma of George Floyd's killing, as well as the trial. And I see a lot of similarities with this particular case. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to get through this and that at the end of the day, justice will prevail.
And we'll be covering it. Nakima and Wisdom. Ladies, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Coming up, our conversation with Princess Diana's brother, Lord Spencer. Oh yeah, he takes our Maggie Ruley on a cruise through the countryside where they grew up. Welcome back to ABC News Live. Well, it's not surprising that Michael Wolff had 3 bestsellers. They were all about that very controversial and complex former president, Donald Trump. Now he's got a new one. Too Famous, The Rich, The Powerful, The Wishful, The Notorious, and The Damned. Deborah Roberts sat down with Wolff for a little insight.
In his new book, Too Famous, Michael Wolff says an intoxicating thirst for that bright light of fame has sent powerful people spiraling.
Everybody always wants more, and more is what leads to too famous and to destruction.
Is fame necessarily corrosive?
Yeah, I think it is. It is often ruinous.
His list of Too Famous subjects, including Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Hillary Clinton, and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein proposed that I write a book about him, and he gives me access to him on a frequent basis, access to what was going on in his house. So I kind of...
So you were a guest in his home?
Yes. I'm not sure anyone who I'm writing about quite makes the distinction about whether I am a fly on the wall or a guest at the banquet.
Wolff claiming that in 2019 he was in the room and recorded this never-released audio as political operative Steve Bannon tried to media train Epstein for a potential television interview.
Money never interested me.
Money never interested you?
No. Money to me is only numbers.
How many houses do you have?
I don't know.
You don't know how many houses you have?
Bannon disputes your account in the recordings and even told the New York Times that he did no media training for Epstein, that the interviews were about a documentary.
Well, it's just not true. The entire discussion was about media training.
He says Epstein was matter-of-fact about the young women in his life, saying that some lied about their ages. Did Jeffrey Epstein realize that people thought of him as a predator, as a bad guy?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
He had a grasp of that.
Completely.
Wolff is no stranger to controversy himself and has faced criticism for not attributing to sources. Do you consider yourself a journalist or a writer?
I consider myself a writer. I want to bring you into the experience. I want you to believe that you are in the room.
What makes them talk to you?
I have no idea.
Are you shocked that sometimes they sit and talk to you?
I'm always shocked, always.
And despite the often brutal portrayals of his subjects, Wolff says the Too Famous often sought him out anyway to write about them, like Harvey Weinstein.
He said, come down to the show, the trial. It will be really good. You'll really like it.
He really called it a show.
Yeah, no. We'll arrange good seats, the whole thing, as though this is a premiere. And I said, Harvey, I'm not going to write a book about you. And he said, you know, you think I'm a nice guy, but you know, I can turn into Michael Corleone like that. And then minutes later, I start getting texts from Harvey. He didn't mean it. I'm so sorry. And he has no idea that this is unacceptable, crazy behavior.
Because he became too famous?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm drawn in. Michael Wolff's book is out today, and thanks so much to Deb Roberts for that sit-down interview. Well, Switching gears a little bit, let's talk about Princess Diana's brother, Lord Charles Spencer. He's actually taking us inside the White Ship, a thrilling new book, which he describes as the Titanic meets Game of Thrones. And of course, our Maggie Rulli spent some time with him in the English countryside where he and Princess Di grew up.
Surrounded by rolling hills and wildlife in the heart of the English countryside.
Wow, this is incredible.
Sits Althorpe House, home to the Spencer family for the past 5 centuries. Now in charge, Charles Spencer, Princess Diana's brother, the 9th Earl.
So I think of this as the family HQ and the flag as the sort of brand, I guess, which we've had for 500 years.
He's welcomed us inside his family's home to talk about his new book, The White Ship, the story of an ancient shipwreck that killed the heir to the British throne, changing the course of English history, arguably one of the greatest disasters England has ever suffered.
It's quite a difficult pitch to say there's a ship that went down 900 years ago and have somebody really get it. So I cut to the chase. I said, essentially, this is Titanic meets Game of Thrones with an element of sliding doors thrown in. The story is timeless and nationless. You know, this is something that could happen to anyone, anywhere.
Taking inspiration from the history that surrounds him, his latest book is a UK bestseller.
I love history and giving it to a wider population. So the books I write are about trying to bring things back to life, things that I think are worthy of memory.
And what a place to be able to work and write your books in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's incredibly lucky. I mean, there isn't a day that goes by where I don't realize that this is really something.
It was on these very grounds where he spent much of his childhood, including precious moments with his sister, Diana.
What is it like for you to know that your home is a place that still honors your sister's legacy?
Well, I think that's really important. I'm thrilled that people still remember her so happily. And, you know, this is a family home with a very rich history over 500 years. But, of course, you know, Diana's the one that'll be remembered in 500 years' time.
And tonight at Kensington Palace, there'll be a party celebrating the unveiling of that Princess Diana statue from earlier this summer, hosted by Prince William. Meanwhile, back in the States, you guys can get your copies of The White Ship. It's hitting bookshelves today. Kira?
Oh, Maggie, you get all the good assignments. And that does it for this hour. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for joining us. And remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. Hope you stay safe and have a beautiful rest of your day.
But we begin in Iraq, where in a courtroom amid tight security, history was made. Saddam Hussein finally went on trial. When the U.S. overthrew the Iraqi leader, it was because the Bush administration said he was trying to build weapons of mass destruction. Those weapons have yet to turn up, but the administration also said that Saddam Hussein was a brutal dictator who murdered his own people, and the evidence of that is abundant. ABC's Jim Sciutto was in the courtroom today.
He was the last to enter the courtroom. The dictator for 24 years, now on trial for murder.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.